Okay, so let me get this going real quick. A very fine morning to you. It is Clyde with PT3D, and today we're going to talk about the Chiron. One of the first issues that I ran into with the Chiron was the mesh bed leveling system. But don't be afraid of it, because I did discover that it does actually work quite well. So let's get started on that. So I'm going to focus the camera on the Chiron because I have a very limited amount of space. So we're going to do this as quickly as possible because, I really like doing my hangouts with Mike over at Wiley 3D. So we're going to start with a quick little thing. First off, I'm going to just make some quick adjustments to this bed. I'm going to just tighten it down there. So I'm adjusting this by probably a millimeter or so, just to show you this is a proof of concept type thing. All right, so I've taken a good, 6 or so turns on this. So what we're going to do first is we are going to heat the bed up to whatever our normal operating temperature is going to be. I print at 60 degrees C, okay? Now, there's a couple of issues that I have that I will explain. For starters, the wire I'm using is a little thicker gauge than what came stock on this. So my variables on here in terms of like the bed temperature, it does initially shoot up a little high and then it comes down a little low and then it sort of evens out. So I have to start by heating up my build plate to 60 degrees C and letting it catch up. Okay, so we're going to do that real quick. So it's right now. That's what it's doing. You can't really see it. Good morning, Mr. Buttram. Yeah, I don't like cross streaming while Mike's on. I needed to get this out. This is kind of an important thing to me. So, all right. So while this is preheating, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to raise our Z-axis by 10. Bring it up to a good height so you can work on it. So that's probably sufficient. And what I'm going to do is we're going to grab the probe to put that on. And it doesn't really matter when you do it, to be honest. It's going to ask you if you have done it, and you just have to say yes. So let's start with the basics. So number one, this is a very tight fit. I've seen this on a different video that I've done, but what we're going to do is we're going to plug it in first. So it's plugged in on the top. And then what you do is you take this and you find the little socket. And it's really hard to see with the camera there, sorry. And you make sure it's flush, okay? So boom, just like that. So we're going to leave that sitting there for a minute. I say everybody wants to be live today. This is really going to be a quick stream anyway, so not too big a deal on that. So anyway, once we get this home, we're going to watch that temperature. We're at 50 degrees C right now. So like I said, you don't want to start doing this leveling just right away. You want to kind of give it a second to heat it all the way up. The size of this build plate causes there to be a little bit of I don't know if it's a ripple or how it works exactly, but it expands, and it expands enough that it can change your build surface height about 1 to 2 millimeters, depending on the temperature you do this at. So if you level this cold and then you start printing, you're not going to be where you want it to be on here. So heat this up to the temperature that you plan on printing at regularly. And I would recommend that if you decide you're going to do this cold, then re-level it cold. If you're going to do it at 60C, level it at 60C. I ran the utility 4 times last time, but I'm not going to do that this time. We're going to try it once. Don't be alarmed, okay? When you first level this system, it may actually hit the edge of this build plate. So but that's actually good. That's not, well, it's not good, but it's not. Anyway, what it does is the second time you run the utility, it will not hit. It'll only hit the first time because it's going to get this gantry in the position that it needs. There's very little clearance between this and the edge of the bed. So if it hits, try not to be too concerned. If it does it for quite a while, then yeah, I would be concerned because it means it's obstructing completely. But initially, I think it bound up for, I don't know, probably a couple of seconds before it fixed itself. So, and we do have a calibration print to run. All right, so right now this is reading at 61 and it's set at 60. So we're going to let it set for another second. Now it's at 62. And I believe, like I said, I believe that's because it's getting more than enough. It's getting enough current going to the build plate that the thermistor can't react fast enough. So once it kind of stables out, it's fine. But these are not the stock cables. I had to make this thing work, so. Unfortunately, this part takes a minute, so I apologize. So anyway, while I'm waiting for this to heat up, let's talk about a couple of things real quick. I need to do an initial thoughts video on the Chiron. I do have 1,000 hours of print time on this thing now, so that's a really excellent thing. It has run very well. I have not had any real issues with it. The only thing you want to make sure is that you check your wheels, make sure that they're not too tight, and make sure that they are moving. I did have an issue with the one up here that I had to adjust that because there was just a little bit too much play in it. So you just kind of firm them up a little bit. It happens in transport, so that's to be expected. The ones on the Z-axis going up and down, I didn't really have any issues with those. The ones under the build plate, there are a ton of them, and I did have issues with about half of them. I had to readjust those just to get them to make contact with the frame. Other than that, let's see. I did change this out with the Capricorn tubing at one point. I had to switch it back to a stock Bowden tube because the filament I had was not dimensionally stable enough for the Capricorn tubing. So we will revisit that in the future. I did that because I wanted to be able to run, slightly hotter temperatures more than PLA, and standard PTFE tubing does tend to wear if you get it too hot. So, all right. So we are just about stable, I think. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through and run our tool. Go to more and then level, and you want to go to probe. So you hit probe, it's going to ask you to install it. We already did, and say okay. And now it's going to go through the leveling sequence. And then as you saw, I did mess with the level on it. So if this doesn't work, then it's going to make me look like a fool. But that's part of this. So I did do the level initially last time, and it printed absolutely perfect. And it did fetch just a little bit there. And I'm going to run this utility twice, just in the interest of making sure that the bed is exactly where I want it to be. I usually preheat my build plate about 5 minutes before I start printing, just to make sure that the build plate's stable. It's probably not necessary, but I don't like having issues that I don't need to have. Plus, this really beat out having to do the micro stepping, so that's a really great thing. And I'm sorry I can't speed this up. Wish I could. But at least you know how long it's going to take, right? So we're at 10 minutes, and this is where we're at, plus the little minute-long spiel I gave. And I'll do a little bit more official, like, thoughts on the Chiron here coming up. I don't know, in a day or two, maybe see if I can't get something a little bit more official. My computer's not really liking doing video editing right now, so. All right, and that's round one. So now what I can do is it wants you to print the test print that comes with the printer. You can certainly do that. I, however, am going to go back to the main menu, and I'm going to run this utility one more time. And then I have a calibration print that I can run. And so I will do that. And we'll see how the first layer looks. Oh, that vibrates horribly. And this time I should go down much smoother. Yep, see, it didn't touch it all that time. And like I said, I know that it's I wish I could speed this up a little bit for you, but this is what you're going to go through. So real-time demonstration is probably the best way to go. That way there's no false expectations. It does take a while. But in the long scheme of things, this is the first time I've ever really had a printer. Hey, Matt, how are you? It's the first time I've had a printer that really does this particular type of auto leveling. And if it works this time around, then I will know that this auto leveling system actually is pretty stable. The first time I leveled this, though, I did learn the hard way that my bed was not to temperature. And, well, let's just say that I had to microstep it a lot at where it needed to be. So, which is something you can do. Especially if you're switching between, temperatures on your build plate, if you're going really hot or going really cold. I mean, you can microstep it if you want, but in my opinion, it actually takes, well, it takes less time to microstep it, obviously, but if you're going to do a bunch of prints at that temperature, you may as well just do this process. But so far, other than the bed wiring issues, I've actually had some really good luck with this printer. It's worked pretty well. I've had a couple of clogs in the extruder and stuff, but I mean, I would expect that on any printer that has a, fairly inexpensive hot end system on it, or extruder. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this off now. And the only thing is the cable guide gets in the way when it's over on this side. And if you're going to use this a lot, make sure you grab the plastic part and pull. Don't pull on the wire, because you'll end up pulling the pins out after a while. So if you want to keep that little probe working as is for an extended period of time, I recommend just, being careful. Don't operate the equipment angry. All right, so now we have a test print. So I'm going to run the i3 Mark II bed test. I have kind of sunk it down in because it's ridiculous in size. So they're about the thickness of poker chips. And we're going to print that. So the nozzle is heating up now. And once this gets through the first pass, we'll be able to get a pretty good idea as to whether or not the layers are going to be good. This is i3 Mark II test, so remember, it's not going to be the full build plate, but it's going to be sufficient to really get a feeling for it. And we are just about to temperature, so... And I will be joining the Google Hangouts over on Wiley's 3D channel here shortly. I just really wanted to get this out because I thought this was exceptionally important for people to know. Large build plate means weird things happen when you heat it up. So I can't stress how important it is to level your bed at the temperature you plan on printing at. And so far, all the connectors on this printer have held stable. The optical sensors are working really well. Speaking of which, I've got looks like some filament hairs over there. I do have a weird vibration going on right now here on the bed. There's a harmonic going on, which is kind of odd. It's the first time I've heard it, so kind of wants to rattle teeth. All right, and here we go. Yeah, this intro sequence, I got to fix on that. Not exactly sure why it's doing that. All right, so far good. It's just that I don't have a really good purge on this, so. Just something I got to put in the entry script, I think. I have adhesion, but it does look a little thin. No, maybe not. It's just I've got some extrusion stuff going on right now. We'll see. We'll let it put down the first layer before we make any judgments. And again, this is just using the auto bed leveling system that it has on board at the temperature that I planned on printing at. And I have not made any micro steps, and I have not touched the knobs underneath the bed to make any adjustments for this. So this is basically straight off of what it came up with as the level based on what the probe saw. So if it prints a full first layer, then we will know that it is an acceptable way for somebody to level their bed without having to go crazy and make all the weird changes using the paper and between the nozzle and all that. And at this time too, I did not heat up the nozzle either, by the way. I left the nozzle cold. So, but it's because it's got a probe on it, so I really didn't see a point in putting the heating up the nozzle. All right, so we got some hairs and stuff on here. I'm not sure what's causing that. I didn't see it. So it could be a coast setting. It could be that some of it's just not sticking, or I don't know. We're going to see in a sec, though. Looks like I did have a little bit of movement on the piece, so it may need to come a little closer. But it's hard to tell if that's a travel point or if it missed, because it looks good around the perimeter with the exception of this one here. And last time I did run this 4 times before I printed, so a little bit of buildup. Definitely not a beautiful first layer, but it is sticking. All right, now we got the actual part itself printing and not the skirt. Or brim, skirt, that thing. See if we can wrap this up in 9 more minutes. Like I said, I really just wanted to show you guys this part, let you know how it works and how it functions. I don't feel like I did it justice the first time I ran this. I learned something new every day, and this was something that I felt was important enough for everybody to see, as it pertains to the Anycubic Chiron. That first layer on the back one looks pretty good, at least from where I'm standing. So I could probably be a touch closer, or tweak the settings a little bit. So it looks like there's just the tiniest of gaps on this particular one, but it's hard to tell from here. We will know in 1 second. Well, not 1 second, but yes. So overall, so far I've been quite happy with this printer. And it does nice big volume stuff too. All right, let's take a look. Looks like we have a little bit of gap in there. I'm going to show you. See if I can't get this a little bit closer. You can see that there's just a tiny bit of a gap in there. There you go. So I don't have a perfect first layer, but my last print job I did. So it could be that I had enough of a variance in my temperature that while it was leveling, I didn't get it at just the right spot. So I'll probably run the utility another once or twice, just to kind of average it out. So, but anyway, as promised, this is why I wanted to show you this. This is an acceptable print. Okay, I would not throw this away. It's stable enough that it's actually got enough, to work with for the second layer. So, yes, it needs to be a little tuned at this point. But for, the starter hobbyist or whatever, this is actually a really, really good start. It's not perfect, but like I said, there could have been a deviation in my print setting, because this one right here is absolutely perfect. Okay, there's no gaps in that one at all, so it's got perfect adhesion all the way around from the circle to the cross part where the infill is. So again, that could be there's like a little blemish on this side of the build plate, and maybe that's where I would select this grid, micro step it up a little bit. This one is better than this one, so again. But if I ran this, I could actually determine whether or not my thicknesses are good, or whether I have a little bit of anything weird going on. So like I said, if I was doing this right out of the box and I ran this utility just the way I did it, it's printing. And I think that is I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? Is being able to print stuff. So anyway, I really didn't want to take too much time, going over this, but I really wanted to mention it because it is important to me. Hopefully it's important to you, especially if you're considering buying a Chiron. I know that there are several of you that are watching my channel that do want to get one or have already purchased one. And I really wanted to, I want to keep you informed, and I'll take any suggestions that you have on content to focus on in regards to the actual Chiron itself. So if you have any questions, I can help you with what I have. But just because I have it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you, because you know how 3D printers are, they kind of do their own thing. So, but I really wanted to thank you for being here. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. You can join me and the other guys on Wiley 3D. And we'll be doing a Google Hangout. So until then, I hope you guys have a rest of the day. And if I don't see you, have a Merry Christmas.